Well, welcome along to Stirring the Pot, the show where we talk politics and we dig a little deeper. Tonight on the panel, I have to my right, journalist Phil Gifford. I also have the editor of Whale Oil to my left, Cameron Slater, and author Olivia Pearson. Welcome to the show. It's been an interesting week. It's going to be a great night. Let's start stirring the pot. Are we ready? Okay. Subject number one. Yes, this is concerning the women Muslim swimmers in Mount Roskill at the pool, that they've given 2 hours a week to teach them how to swim.
Yeah. Well, it's not much easier than me, because a big fat rats is how much I care about that. But Cameron has some strong views on it.
This is because you're not a big swimmer?
You'll start
Just because I think it's such a tiny and one piddly little swimming pool for 2 hours a week.
But it's not one swimming pool. It's already being implemented at Mount Albert, and this is the tip of the iceberg. And you will care when you start having to comply with Sharia law.
That is a massive.
It's a bit of a big
just
jump.
Crossed an enormous ladder there. So we've gone from 2 hours a week to help stop people from overseas drowning.
But this is how
hold
Muslims
on, in a country
So what
that
if they drown?
massive drowning problem. And so what if they drown is probably something we could discuss in a second.
Have you ever seen Muslims at the beach?
Well, no, but now perhaps
well,
we
let
will.
me explain to you, because I live at the beach. I live in Arkles Bay, and my house is right there by the beach, and I see Muslims turn up, and you see the women that get told where they're going to sit on the beach, and there they are in their, tent, sitting there fully covered, while the blokes are in their shorts, down cavorting in the water. This is not part of our Kiwi culture. The beach is for everybody, and we're having our culture overridden by other immigrant cultures that are coming here who are completely intolerant of our lifestyle, and we have to be tolerant of their intolerance. And I'm not going to be tolerant of their intolerance.
But surely a big part of New Zealand culture is welcoming other cultures to our country and saying, hey, this is something that we provide you to make your time here a more acceptable and more enjoyable lifestyle.
Yeah, but
Isn't that fantastic?
no, but it's not even about welcoming. I mean, that's not necessarily a defining aspect of who we are. We allow other people to come into our culture so long as they abide by our culture. And this is cultural jihad. Once women Muslims in every Western country around the world have actually implemented this in their swimming pools. This is not just New Zealand.
Cameron, why don't you just get out?
My name's Olivia.
No, but I'm talking to Cameron. Sorry, because this is
you're a woman,
like,
and we're going to treat you like Islam does, and we're going to ignore everything
We're giving
you
you
say.
an example of what jihad law will be like when they take over. Cameron and Olivia, why don't you put on your budgie smugglers, and why don't you put on your bikini, and when the Muslims go down and modestly stay inside a little tent on the beach, which is so offensive to me personally, and obviously to you, why don't you just strut down with the old budgie smugglers and the bikini on and show them what New Zealand culture's like?
I think budgie smugglers should be banned
well,
too.
we do that.
Yeah.
We do that. I do wear a bikini on the beach,
Yeah, well,
and I look
that's
pretty
fine.
good in one too.
Well, then whenever you see these
I look like a
dreadful
woman.
dreadful Muslims covering themselves and the guys cavorting, I think was the word you used, in the sea, then why don't you go and cavort on the beach and show them that's how Kiwis do it?
No, look, Phil, you're missing the point here.
Yeah,
right?
totally
missing the point. You're thinking this is insignificant. You need to get out of your cloistered liberal journalist guise, actually go to the supermarket and have a look at the impost that is happening now just in food production with Sharia. You will see almost every product that's on our shelves now has halal certification.
Every product.
Go and have a look. You
Almost every product.
will be gobsmacked. There's all this massive fuss, right, over Cadbury closing a factory in Dunedin. Go have a look at every Cadbury bar. On the back, it's halal certified. They've paid money to a bunch of Muslims who run the certification program that say, yep, you're doing well. When you make the chocolate, the bars are facing Mecca, and it's all going the same way. And they're imposing fees and funds on that. What happens to that money? But why are we having Islamic food rules and regulations imposed on New Zealand society?
Because they want to sell them to people that are of Muslim
Fine,
persuasion.
sell it to them, but not to me. I'm not interested.
No, well, so what? Well, don't read the frigging back of
No.
it. Just eat the chocolate.
Well,
That's
no.
one way. If you really want to be offended,
point is
as
that's
you obviously
become
do, there
law.
are
It's
things you
become
can find
normal.
Anywhere. My wife is a celiac. She's diagnosed as celiac. We look at the back of the thing to see if it's anti-gluten. Are you offended by that?
Are
you offended by that?
I'm not offended by very much at all.
No, well, you
Do
appear to be
celiac people
extremely
run around
offended
and
by
behead
that.
other
I'm not
people?
offended at all. But I'm not. Your wife's not applying rules to everybody. You're self-educating yourself.
Yeah.
You're saying this has got wheat in it. I'm not going to eat that.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas these small minority of people in New Zealand are now imposing rules for packaging, on production. Do you know that all of our meat, every single piece of meat that you buy in the supermarket, is halal certified? It means nothing to me.
No.
Right, halal certification.
Or not
But
at all.
I have to buy meat that's died because it faced Mecca and was looking the wrong way. You know,
Okay,
And
it's
Why
ridiculous.
does that upset you?
It upsets me that our food regulations, our own culture, our own lifestyle is being imposed upon by people who have come here to live because they don't like where they were living in the first place. So why have they imported the same shitty rules that they left to this country?
And it's a symptom of cultural jihad in Western nations that the Islamic people start to make rules, they start to go to the bureaucracies in order to have things legislated for their own benefit. They're not compatible with Western culture, they're not compatible with Western civilization. And when you talk about celiac people do this, I don't know the last time the celiac people ran around the world in Western countries and actually tried to execute people in the name of their God.
Well,
Okay?
I think
Muslims do
It's
do
a
that.
hell of a stretch.
So that's
it's
It's
not
a hell of a
stretch.
stretch for women learning to swim in Mount
Absolutely.
Roskill and
to be fair, we
mad
did-
bombers who most of them aren't even.
Where's the Jewish
Aren't even,
women?
They are
Muslims.
waging jihad in Western countries. They are waging jihad in their own countries. They are waging
They're using
cultural
our-
jihad in our countries. Are you going to ignore that and just go, this is just a bunch of poor little people that just need their own
They're
swimming
the biggest
lessons?
snowflake
This is
organisation.
how they do
You're
it.
paralleling that with a group of women
It's
learning how to
happening
swim.
That's
Yeah.
a public
Learning how to
pool.
swim.
That's a
No.
public
We
pool.
let
They
young
can
children
swim-
learn
they
how to
can
swim.
go to
They
s-
have their own private
they
time.
can go to
Are
swimming
you offended
lessons.
by kids having their own swimming lessons?
They
Private
can
swimming
go
lessons.
and swim
Or is
with
there a
everybody
cultural
else,
child
but
jihad
no,
against
we've
adults and
got
against parenthood?
Muslim women only. That's
Yeah,
what it
and,
says
and
on the
soon
timetable.
it will be Muslim children only,
Well,
and Western children won't be welcome in that
Would
pool
that
at
be
all.
because they haven't integrated as much as they feel uncomfortable, they feel nervous about coming to a
No,
new environment?
here's what my
and they just wanna-
integration
Why
rule should
would
be.
they feel that? Why would they feel uncomfortable about coming to New Zealand?
I hope they feel a little bit uncomfortable, actually, because when it comes to integrating into a new country, they are meant to go through the process of adapting to our ways, not the other way around. If that makes them uncomfortable, well, then maybe that's a natural
and
process they
try-
have to go
go
So
through.
and
they should convert from their religion to
No, they can
something
have
else.
their
uphold their-
religion. They can have their religion all they like. Don't impose their values onto me. If I wanted to go swimming at 8 o'clock at night at that pool, I can't because I'm not Muslim.
And you
I'm
couldn't
not a
go,
woman.
if you wanted to go at, say, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you couldn't go because that pool might be closed for children from a local primary school to swim at it as well.
But it's all children.
Are they trying to take over
No,
the world?
it's all children.
It's not
Yes,
a
but
race
you couldn't go because you're
or
an
a
adult.
religion-based
It's-
thing. This is a religious-based thing,
but
Phil.
this is like, but surely, I mean...
But they all wear
so maybe we
bikinis,
should
so
have-
what
we
are
should
we
have
protecting them
integrated
from?
changing
What a bunch
rooms
of
at schools
snowflakes.
when kids go and have a swim at school. You know, are you saying that boys and girls shouldn't have integrated toilets before they get changed with
Oh, no,
the
but you haven't moved on to that cultural jihad that's happening around toilets at schools, have you?
Well,
where
I'm not
where
sure.
some bloke is at school who feels like they're a woman now wants to use the
Okay.
girls' toilets, and they're having a massive fit over that.
It's
This
another
is the
thing.
creeping death that there is. There's only two sexes, male and female, right? Here's the thing, right? This is a ratepayer-funded swimming pool. This is public funds.
Okay.
Right? If it is so important for Muslim women to learn how to swim, then why isn't Saudi Arabia funding public swimming pools for Muslim citizens while they're funding madrasas, mosques, halal certification and everything else under the sun?
Mind you, last week you were suggesting that libraries, and I presume swimming pools come into it as well, that
Absolutely.
councils have no right to build swimming pools
Correct.
or to run libraries.
Yep.
So here's the answer.
Close them down.
If you get what you want, you close down every public facility so kids can't learn to swim, but never mind because it means Muslims won't be able to learn to swim as well, so it's all
Who
right.
taught you to swim,
And
Phil?
that also means that you're asking them to
I
integrate into
was
a culture which they
taught-
can't
Who
read
taught
about.
you
At a
to
school
swim?
pool.
At a school pool.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
If there'd been a public pool, I might have learned there, but I
Oh,
learned
well,
at
I
a school
learned to
pool.
swim at a school pool as well.
Yeah.
Right.
The point
And what
is,
does that
though,
prove?
to make this distinction, the point is this is a religious practice in a public pool. This is a religious... The reason that they're not comfortable,
And the
since you
last
like
thing
that
that's
word,
funny about that,
is that, hold on, Cam, is that they're not comfortable because they don't like swimming and exposing their bodies, or even though they're in a bikini half the time, in front of Western males. It's a religious mandate
Well,
that makes them want to
but
do
is-
this. And
is
I've
it
got
a-
a problem with it right there, because Christians don't ask for the same stipulation.
well, that's not entirely
neither
true.
do
That's not
Jews,
entirely
neither
true.
do Hindus. The only religion that seems to ever want these stipulations
It's the
to be made
snowflake
law
religion.
is the snowflake
Well,
religion,
you can't
otherwise
get,
known as
you can't marry
Muslims.
you can't marry an Anglican at a Catholic church. You both have to be Catholic. I mean, there are
Yeah,
religions that don't. let you
Christians
get married
have
in particular.
plenty of restrictions.
This
They're
is
pretty
not a
restricted.
Christian pool.
They're not,
It's a public
they're not
pool.
insisting
But-
that the ratepayers of Auckland have segregated swimming lessons. That's the important thing here, right? Is that we're all paying for this, and they're creating these cultural segregations. What I'm going to be mostly amused by is when some transitioning transgender bloke rocks up in his one piece, complete with meat and veg, and says he feels like a woman and he'd like to go to the swimming lessons and see what happens
in a
there.
Borat suit.
In a Borat suit, yeah. And the last thing about the whole swimming pool is that this pool's run and managed by the YMCA, the Young Men's Christian Association, and they're creating segregation for Muslim and for women's. It's a joke.
Or they're being very accepting as a religious group.
They're being tolerant of intolerance.
Well, if anything, they're showing other religions that they're
Well,
welcoming
possibly,
into their
yeah.
religion.
Have
Well,
we
well,
considered, have we
Here's
considered
the
the
thing,
possibility they might be
right?
trying to convert somebody?
In Saudi Arabia, what's their immigration policy? It's fit in or
But
fuck
that- but
off.
surely
And it
that-
should be the
but
same
should-
thing for here.
Well,
Saudi Arabia's always been
not
a
sure.
golden beacon as far as I'm concerned.
Oh,
for
they're the
immigration
chair. They're the
policies.
chair of the Human Rights of the United Nations Human Rights Council. So
And
they
they
are
are-
a beacon of human rights.
So basically, what you're saying is that our immigration policy should be based and modelled on Saudi Arabia.
No, it should be. Our
Well, you just said that.
Well, no. It
You
should
can't
be,
change your words after you've said them.
Well, what I'm saying, Phil, is that each country should set their own rules and not have rules imposed on them by quasi-governmental organisations like the United Nations and other, tin pot dictatorships out there that are lecturing us about human rights and that we all have to be tolerant, but they're not themselves.
Okay.
Where they've got it right is they say, you want to come to Saudi Arabia, you want to live here, you want to immigrate here, these are the rules. And if you don't like those, don't come here. Whereas we say, oh, come here, it's all right. We'll throw all of our values, everything we've
We'll
fought
bend
for,
over
we'll
backwards
bend
so
over
you feel
backwards, and they
comfortable.
come here and they feel comfortable, and then they go, you know what? We'd really like some Sharia laws here. We'd really like to have some segregation, and we want to make sure that women can swim away from the sordid, leering views of these rampant males who
Did
can't
you be
contain
stealing
themselves
men?
when they see a Muslim woman, because that's what they're telling us.
well, I'm not sure
Possibly
they
not in
are.
those phrases, I wouldn't have thought. But
I mean, do you honestly believe that anyone will be affected by 2 hours of not being able to go to pool
That's
because
not
these
the
people
point.
are doing
Well, they
this?
are.
There's no
So it's
point
just
arguing.
but it's just the principle
It's
for you.
it is absolutely the principle. Thank you for mentioning that word,
Okay.
Brendan.
Principles.
It is the principle
You don't know
that,
those that are
on the
feeding.
basis of their religion, which makes them feel uncomfortable, they will
Give them a box of tissues.
wage cultural jihad there. If anyone is in doubt about what cultural jihad means, it literally means that the Muslims actually start to implement their lifestyle over ours. And when you're talking about a ratepayer-funded pool or a public pool, there is no closing off the lanes so that other people can't swim with
Do you
any
think
other
that-
religion or.
Okay.
You
Do you,
know,
do you
there
think what you're saying is that you think that if the Muslim culture was to have an uprising aquatically, they would do it?
No, I'm not
Are
saying
you
that, but I'm
they're
saying
gonna
this
lose
is the
swimming because they're
beginning.
trying
Before,
to invade us and bring that?
That's right.
This
You'll be
is-
first against the wall when they take over.
this is what they do, though.
Don't think
It's-
so, buddy. Not if they've watched this show.
No, I won't be standing against any wall. I'll be out there with the necessary requirements to defeat them.
Well, I'll tell you what, if there were Muslims over there and then you turned around and there was Cameron Slater, I think you'd find there'd be a few enemies with people from New Zealand pointing in your direction.
Yeah.
So they don't
But,
believe in freedom of speech, do they? Whereas
Can
I
I
do
just
believe
ask
in
you
it.
one question, though, Phil, just to get
Sure.
this clear?
Yeah.
Do you agree, I mean, and is it okay with you, that a group of people with a very specific religious code
Based
Yeah.
in the 7th century.
can dictate,
Hang on, just.
can dictate
What does it matter? A rat's ass.
What
it's
their
based,
scruples are
Christianity is based on
around a
what's-
public service?
That they
I
should
mean,
what?
that they can dictate their scruples in a public pool. I mean, on the basis of their religion. Is that okay with you? Because last time I thought we had religious tolerance and that there was a separation of religion and state in this country.
Yeah, and I mean, but while we don't have a constitution, I've always understood we had religious tolerance. But there's always been. I mean, you could suggest that, for example, in the old days, you weren't a Catholic, you didn't play rugby for Marist. Does that mean that the Catholics wanted to take over the country and execute all Protestants?
No, but that's a school, and also we are.
No.
It's also a private club.
That's a sport.
It's a private club.
That many of whose teams played on public fields. Because if you played rugby in Auckland, you know a fact.
And everyone who played them wanted to beat them into the ground because they were Catholic.
But if this was somebody's private pool...
To me, it's as silly as to suggest that because Catholics have had a rugby clubs all over New Zealand. I've gone all over New Zealand with it, Brendan. I've got these Catholic rugby clubs all over New Zealand, and they've been going, many of them, for well over 100 years. And why would
Shows how successful they've been.
Why would you fear that the Catholics were trying to take over New Zealand and impose their religion on the country?
If this was a private pool owned by Ahmed, Hussein, say, if it was a private pool and it was his business, and then I would have no problem with him asserting who could swim in his pool. We all know that he probably wouldn't let Jews swim there, but anyway, that would be his prerogative if it was a private thing. This is a public thing. Our taxes pay for that.
But your argument's specious. It really is.
Oh, really?
Well, yes,
hold on.
No, hang on a second.
Okay.
Because the Marist wasn't insisting that practice night at those public fields was only for Catholics.
You've played for Marist, have you? Because I have.
Well, then you must be left-footed. No wonder you're sticking up for them.
So you've played for them, so you know that a Protestant could go and play for them.
Well, they can.
Mate, don't take me on rugby clubs, because you know dirty squat shit about rugby clubs.
What I do know is that Marist and the Catholic Church in New Zealand are not insisting that public facilities be segregated just for Catholics to practice.
No.
That's not happening. So therefore, that's it. The argument's over.
Well, hold on. But if you could provide an example of something that's happened in New Zealand that's given us a reason to fear, surely your argument would be a little bit stronger. But you can't just go, this is what's going to happen, yet we have nothing.
So we've got to wait till something happens and then we can. We could look at the rest of the world and all the evidence before us that as soon as Islamic communities reach 2% of the population, or 5% of the population, or 10% of the population,
it's over at 4.
Then these things don't happen. We can look at the United Kingdom, we can look at the Netherlands, we can look at France, we can look at Spain, we can look at anywhere in the world.
Don't forget Sweden.
Germany.
Sweden is another example.
But we're not talking about New Zealand.
There are no-go
enormous amount
areas.
of immigrants from Muslim countries. There aren't a lot of immigrants from Muslim countries.
So it'll take one Prime Minister to alter that figure of how many come in, and if they're under any kind of pressure from the UN, which
we're
the
almost
UN
at
does,
2% now.
then that can be changed like that. I mean, I want New Zealand to learn from what's going on in the European countries that we're so fond of replicating, and not let this happen.
We've got far more Chinese people living in New Zealand. We all of a sudden have become a real socialist and communist.
Do they ask for public pools to have Chinese women only?
No,
lessons?
but the Labour Party doesn't want people with chinky sounding names owning property.
What a weird place to leave it.
Oh, and there's another rat's nest that was just opened up.
Well, I think we've got to leave that there. Well done, people. And good on you two. You haven't had fisticuffs here, so that's a good start.
And no one called anyone a dickhead.
Yet.
Good result.
There's plenty of time.
That's right. Well, let's see if we can make that happen. Let's keep stirring the pot. What have we got here? Oh, okay. Now, this was brought up earlier, but it's happened again this week. This is about the University of Auckland. There's a group who have been accused of being white supremacists, and they have had their posters ripped down at Auckland University. And I guess the debate is, are they white supremacists? Is there freedom of speech on campuses? What's happening to universities? Let's start with Phil.
Well, first of all, I think that I can understand why people are concerned about this. Because what happens is you get a tiny little group that do something that appears innocent, like maybe learning how to swim. And then 5 seconds later, you've got these white supremacists jackbooting up and down the country. They're zig-hailing, they've got Nazi flags everywhere, and we're buggered. So I think it's very important, as we've heard. Right. You've got to nip it in the bud, mate. You've got to nip it in the bud.
Well, the actual fascists are the ones who are tearing down the posters and stopping people having freedom of speech and insisting that they follow some sort of ethical, moral guidelines that we're not allowed to know, but they're the masters of it all.
Well, before we go there, though, do you know anything about the group? What they're suggesting, what their aims are?
They can wear leather pants and YMCA hats and swastikas, all they like, and wander around, and then we can all laugh at them. We can just treat them exactly the same way that Nelson Muntz treats everybody on The Simpsons by going ha 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 at them. Right, the answer to these people who want to be neo-Nazis or some sort of Nazi or whatever and dress up in weird black clothes and some sort of fetish, let them and laugh at them. The answer to any sort of behaviour like that is not to force it underground, not to hide from it. It's to challenge their ideas. You don't challenge people's ideas by blacklisting them, by banning them, by removing their posters,
death threats,
or sending them death threats or whatever. Right, just drives it underground. There'll be a very small group. There always is. There's always a small group of nutters in any sort of organisation and group. Laugh at them. You know.
Do you think there's an argument that at university level, if you can stomp that out at that level, that it would never be seen again, and that would be their argument?
But what happens when someone decides that we don't want to have comedians showing up at universities? Because, well, you know, most Kiwi comedians, once you get past their 5 dick jokes that they know, it's irrelevant. It's not very good discourse. They're mocking people, so we think they should be banned from universities as well. It's creeping death. As soon as you start putting somebody else's values on what can and can't be said in places like universities, which are supposed to, you know, they have academic freedoms. Their professors can advocate for taxes, want sugar taxes, want all of these things. And if you dare criticise them, then you're breaching academic freedoms. But God forbid somebody says something that might hurt someone's feelings. You know, hurty feelings is not a reason to stop people saying something.
I agree with what Cameron's saying in that the problem with a lot of let's say it's hard to say the younger generation, but people at university is that it's not that they get offended by being disagreed with. It's about, you could agree with 90%. It's the fact that you don't agree with the other 10% that riles them up. It's an intolerance that's happening at universities that worries me.
Intolerance, yeah. And I mean, the fact is that by and large, people who get angry and excited and bugged about things, it's from intolerance. They're intolerant of people. They're intolerant of, in this case, they're intolerant of people that may or may not be neo-Nazis. Who cares? And I agree with Cameron. They're probably just a bunch of loonies, and a handful of them. On the other hand, but intolerance comes into basically sort of everything. And the problem is that if you are going to say it's all right to be intolerant about neo-Nazis, the next thing you're going to say it's all right to be intolerant about Catholics, about Muslims, about whoever you got.
Oh, come on, you went to Marist.
Because it's the same. It's the same blinkered, stupid, Latin, very narrow thinking. So, as far as I'm concerned, everybody's got a right to express themselves, whatever they want to say.
But do you think there's an argument? Sorry, Olivia, I'll bring in a sec. Do you think there is an argument though that there it is a good thing to stamp out any communication that incites hatred?
I think we should be very intolerant toward those who are intolerant. Muslims being one group. They are the most intolerant people in the universe, and I am not tolerant of them because they would seek to take away my freedoms, and I'm not going to tolerate that. But with this particular instance, there were posters that went up that said White Lives Matter and something about European supremacists, although I'd be careful when people use the word supremacist because it's always associated with fascist jackboots and that kind of thing.
Wrote the article.
But on that note, if there are a group of university students who would like to advocate for European values being superior, then I'm okay with that because European values are superior. And Western values have been created the greatest countries in the world. We should be proud of them, but we have been so dominated by multiculturalism that we're losing our culture, we're losing our values, and you are never ever allowed to stand up for your culture if you're white.
Can I just ask, how would you feel about a Muslim posters going up for a Muslim group at Auckland University?
Fine, they'll be allowed, and they will be.
What about you? You'd be happy with the Muslims having a group at Auckland University?
I'm perfectly okay because it brings forth debate, and that's fine. That happens anyway under the guise of multiculturalism. You know, if you want to be taken seriously, speaking about anything to do with race relations, and it is Race Relations Day today, as Susan Devoy likes to remind us. You know, when it comes to Western culture, for some reason, that's the culture that nobody seems to tolerate anymore. And that's a problem because we have the best values in the world.
Well, you believe it's still dominant. Why do you not think it's
depends on where you're
dominant?
looking at it from. If you look at it within government,
Yes.
for example,
Yeah.
then I would say to you that the dominant culture within government is Maori culture. They open absolutely everything these days with the waving of fronds and the sprinkling of water and a few wailing you know, females from the marae.
University graduations.
Would that be
just
more
dominant.
symbolic than reality, though?
It
Given and
is
have a look-
totally dominant. Go to
How many
any opening.
Pākehā MPs are
See,
there
I
compared to
object to
Maoris?
that
So
word.
there's a decision
Sorry?
made.
I object to being called Pākehā.
Jesus, you're a little snowflake, aren't you?
How do you identify?
Well, how many white
European.
MPs are there compared to Maori MPs if you don't like Pākehā?
What would you say?
What's the greatest proportion? Are there more Maori
But
MPs
you
than there are
can drill
white
down on that
MPs?
all the time, but the bottom line is that we've got legislation that's being passed that talks about honouring the principles of the treaty. We've got legislation that's being passed that creates a frickin' person out of a bloody river, right? Which is now a person, which presumably they'll be lining up to get the dole next and all sorts of other...
Which is not in any way a racist statement, is it?
Well, what other country has a river created as a
And
person
the river
in
that's
legislation?
lining up to get the dole, what are you implying by that exactly?
Once you're once legislation allows inanimate objects to become people under the law, then those people can apply for things. They can become responsible for things. Is the river going to vote now?
And you think the
it's
river...
ridiculous.
You think the river has been created by Maori so they can line up for the dole for it?
No, they've created a situation where idiots like Chris Finlayson and Nick Smith and other bleeding heart liberals are passing laws creating people out of objects like rivers and mountains. It's ridiculous.
Well, we have gone over time, but listen, would you at least agree that even if you're of the belief that our culture is the best, that it's still up to us to integrate everybody into that culture?
No, I won't
Only if
agree.
they want-
Or into that success and let
only if
everybody
they
have
are going
a
to
piece of it.
integrate.
They have to integrate with our culture when they come to our country.
Well, that's been another episode of Stirring the Pot. It's been a very interesting half an hour. Thank you very much to the panel for being here tonight, and we'll see you next week where we stir the pot once again.